you're you're all joining in, but um, I would like to start with the content of the book that we have to cover together within this semester. I am Professor Jabari. You may um, see that apparently I was decided to be your professor for this course of study in which we have to learn something about the skills in teaching a foreign or a second language. The book I've chosen for you is going to be Practical English Language Teaching, edited by David Noonan. Uh, at the beginning of the course, I would like to tell you that all the exam questions will be just um, taken from the text of this book. Therefore, you have to carefully examine the content and self study some of the parts that I tell you within the class time. Without further ado, I would like to jump to chapter one, which is all about methodology. I would like to zoom in so that you can see my screen better. Chapter one has something to do with methodology of language. David Noonan developed this chapter, and in the following chapters, we will be covering some points about both receptive and productive skills of the language, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and then we will continue to the end of the book. They asked me to just have this online class, these online sessions with you for a couple of weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. But after Nowruz holiday in Iran, we will have a chance to visit one another face to face. And in that case, I will just resume the syllabus. Uh, you may see that section one or chapter one of this book is all about exploring skills. It will introduce you to language teaching methodology from the perspective of language skills, that is, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Uh, One point that I would like to mention at the beginning of this session is that uh, I will give you, after each class, I will give you like the highlighted PDF version of my book. I mean, I will crop and share it with you on our Telegram group. So you don't need to just study the materials which are not covered within the class time. Uh, this chapter is all about definition and methodology. We will explain how methodology is related to curriculum development and syllabus design. We will describe methods debate about what the best method is. We will explain the basic principles of communicative language teaching and some other counterparts that it has. We will discuss some of the research findings that have influenced language teaching methodology, and we will create instructional sequences that incorporate the pre-task, task, and follow-up cycle. The first point to be mentioned is somehow the differences and similarities that exist between and within a couple of terminologies, such as methodology, see what methodology is about, and we will just have a look at syllabus design and evaluation. You see that the book starts with curriculum development. It is mentioned that the field of curriculum development is large and complex. It includes all of the planned learning experience in an educational setting. Curriculum has the three main subcomponents. It might be an exam question for you. Like I asked you for the subcomponents of a curriculum, you have to mention syllabus design, methodology, and evaluation. Syllabus design has something to do with selecting, sequencing, and justifying the content. For example, in a grammar book, which tenses are you going to present to the students first? Are you going to present them first with present continuous, then, for example, present simple, then past simple, or vice versa? And therefore, when you make when you have selected the content, you have to justify that content. Methodology has something to do with selecting, sequencing, up to justifying the. It is methodology is exactly like syllabus design, but methodology differs in a point that in methodology you have to justify learning tasks and experiences. For example, if you say that the students must not use, for example, their mother tongue within the class time, you have to justify your decision. Why? The why of it is somehow important. Evaluation has, as you know, has something to do with decision making. It has to do with how well students have mastered the objectives of the course and how effectively the course has met their needs. I would like to pose a question on you. I would be grateful if somebody can answer this question. Can you tell me the difference that exists between objectives, the word objective, and goal, in very simple English? Can you hear me, everyone? I need a volunteer to talk about the difference between the word goal and objective. If you have any background information, please don't hesitate to share it with me and other classmates of yours. Um, any ideas? Yes, we are with you, Doctor. Yes, yes, but can you please just unmute your microphone and keep talking about these two terms if you know the difference? If not, that would be okay. I myself will continue. Yes, apparently we don't have any volunteer or something. You may just, yeah, yeah. Um, I will just take the role and explain it myself. When students come to the class, they all have the same goal, for example, which is learning a language. To learn a language, they need to be familiar with a couple of objectives. Like, for example, at the beginning of a book, when you have a book in your hand, it is written, for example, by the end of by the end of this chapter, students should master, for example, tenses in English. You know, uh, when we're talking about these two terms, goal and objective, goal is something general, objective is something specific, and it is narrower in scope. You know that for learning a foreign language, you have to know, you have to master tenses in English, which may help you with your accuracy. And objectives, several different objectives may lead to a goal. It is just, I mean, their differences lie in their scope and in their coverage. Going back to the book, we have a table here that mentions these terms in a nutshell. Syllabus design has something to do with content. What content should we teach? In what order should we teach this content? What is the justification for selecting this content? But methodology has something to do with classroom techniques and procedures, like what exercises and what tasks and activities should be used in the classroom. You know, the difference between tasks and exercises is that in doing exercises, students do not need background knowledge, but in doing the tasks, students need background knowledge, right? And what else? How should we sequence and integrate? And then we have a phase called evaluation, in which you're going to assess the outcome of a student's learning. How well have our students done, and how well has our program served our students' need? The book continues with the discussion of the word methodology. You know that whenever you see the suffix eulogy at the end of the word or something, eulogy has something to do with the scientific study of a language. From time to time, I just check the status of my laptop to see if it has got enough of charge. In the middle of the class, I have to connect it to a charger. Uh, Methodology has something to, eulogy means the scientific study of something, but from a book called Langman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics, we have the definition of the word methodology. You know, this book sometimes requires your background knowledge in the field of applied linguistics. This is the book, Langman Dictionary of Applied Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics, developed by Jackson Richards. So, if you don't know the meaning of certain words, I expect you that to go just through the pages of this book and see if you can improve your background knowledge on a topic, right? It has got, I mean, the list of these technical terms and definitions are alphabetically ordered in this dictionary of applied linguistics, you may just search approach, you may search method to see how they differ from one another. We have a definition taken from Dictionary of Applied Linguistics. It is the study of methodology, is the study of practices and procedures used in teaching and the principles and beliefs that underline them. Therefore, methodology includes a study of the nature of language skills, such as, for example, reading, writing, speaking, listening, and procedures for teaching them. It includes a study of preparation of lesson plans, materials, and textbooks for teaching language skills. You have to know, for example, how to develop lesson plans. It is one of the required skills for all language teachers. The evaluation and comparison of language methods, which one I should go for example, is other lingual methods and or CLT, for example, better for such students. Such practices, procedures, and principles and beliefs themselves. Whatever you do in language teachings require planning, right? For example, if you have chosen to continue with, I don't know, other lingual approach or other lingual methods, you may see that the word approach, wait, I'm sorry. These two technical terms can be found everywhere. Like we have other lingual can be both a method and an approach, but in Dictionary of Applied Linguistics, we have the word method for other lingualism. Other names for other lingual methods can be the oral method. It can be like the mim-mem method or mimicry memorization method, which is a method of foreign or second language teaching, which emphasizes the teaching of speaking and listening before reading and writing. Or it uses dialogues and drills, because the word otherlingualism was first used in army context. We have the word drill for it because drill means something that is based upon repetition and in which students' error is not taken into account. In an other lingual class, if you use like your mother tongue, whether it is Arabic, Persian, whatever it is, you will be severely punished by the teacher, and it often makes use of contrastive analysis, like how the structures of your mother tongue differ from those of the target language. Therefore, the audiolingual method was prominent in the 1950s and 1960s, especially in the United States, and has been widely used in many other parts of the world. The theory behind the audiolingual method is oral approach to language teaching, which contains the following beliefs about language teaching and language learning. Speaking and listening are the most basic skills. Each language has its own unique structures and rule system. A language is learned through forming habits. These ideas were based partly on the theory of structural linguistics and partly on behaviorism. You know, 2 points, I mean, say, school of thoughts that support other lingualism are structural linguistics that says language is made upon different structures, and in order to master the language, you have to master these structures, and behaviorism, which treats language as a point of, let's say, forming the correct habit. Therefore, from time to time, when you have a technical term in this book, the book developed by David Newnan, you can go back to Dictionary of Applied Linguistics and cross check your understanding with what is previously written in there. And if you do not know, for example, some terms, you may learn it from Jackson Richards. Uh, if you have a look at this book, like the one developed by Jackson Richard, you may say that you have different approaches and different methods, like cognitive code approach, communicative approach, like CLT, also mem methods or mimicry memorization method, and some other method as well, such as, for example, Suggestopedia. But one question that exists in too many, let's say, teaching books is that what is the best method? I cannot admit his request. Yes, he has just joined in. You're warmly welcome. One of the common points in many of the teaching books is about the definition of method. Method is a single set of procedures which teachers are to follow in the classroom. Everything in a method is just limited to what you do in the classroom. But when it comes to approach, it is something more general. It includes some philosophical, let's say, a statement behind it. Methods are also usually based on a set of beliefs about the nature of language and language learning. For many years, the goal of pedagogy was to find the right method. You know, there exist a couple of scholars who were looking, for example, for finding the answer to this question: what is the best method in the world? Right? Is there any methodological magic formula that would work for all learners all the time? We have a book called the Apple Book, developed by Celsa Morsia, in which uh, we have some statements about post method era. But what is a post method era? Prabhu in 1990 uh, asked why there is no best method. We have different people who talked about, for example, the advantages of CLT over other lingualism or some other old method that which were previously used. They say that different methods are best for different teaching and learning circumstances. Think of the time, for example, you go to your class. As a teacher, you keep up with the tenets of CLT, but you see that some of your students want to uh, they're looking for explicit learning of grammar. So in that situation, you have to stick to other lingual methods, right? Or to grammar translation method. And you cannot say, for example, okay, my first top criteria for learning a foreign language, and my expectation is that my students learn how to speak. It is not the case for the students. Some students come to your class and they have specific needs. Therefore, you have to see in which context to use which method. All methods have truths or validities. This is not a case that you say, okay, for example, other lingualism was something bad and CLT is much, much better than other lingualism. No, you may not just distinguish between methods that way. And number three is that the whole notion of what is good or what is bad is irrelevant. You may not say that, for example, other lingualism was something bad and evil, but for example, CLT is something good, because even the word good or bad themselves, they themselves are ambiguous. When, for example, they are subjective, I wonder if you know the meaning of what subjective is. If something is subjective, for example, think of a good learner. What do we mean by adjective good for learners? Do we mean someone who is intelligent, someone who is, I don't know, hardworking, someone who is talented for learning a foreign language? You see that the word good here is somehow subjective. Also, so is the word best here, because when we say best, we don't exactly know what we mean by best. Moving on, later on, another scholar called Kumaralawadi Velo in 1994, exactly 4 years after Prabhu, kept talking about not choosing a single best method. He said, whatever method you choose should maximize the learning opportunities for the students. It should facilitate the negotiated interaction. That means it doesn't matter if you choose, for example, to go for CLT or other lingualism. A student should be given a chance to talk to one another. Minimize perceptual mismatches. If the teacher is explaining something but you understanding in a wrong way, again, your method is in charge and is responsible for that. It should activate intuitive heuristic. You should find the answer for many of the why questions that you have in the back of your mind. It should raise students awareness. It should contextualize linguistic input, integrate language skills, and so many other points as well. So we have these points about the best method. Therefore, we do not have a best method. Method are best for considering the context in which they're being used. We have enough of discussions about communicative language teaching, like grammar translation. After the class, you may just check grammar translation to this dictionary of applied linguistics and see what it says about grammar translation and other lingual approach as well. You know that other lingualism is rooted in behaviorism. They treat learning a foreign language as forming habits through repetition, imitation, and conditioning. We have structural linguistics, which says that in order to learn a language, you need to go for the surface structures that exist uh, in the language. To cut a longer story short about other lingualism, we may say that in other lingualism, the priority is given to spoken rather than the written language. Language learning is basically a matter of developing a set of habits through drilling. You teach the language, not about the language. That means in other lingualism, the focus is just on the structure of the language, not what the students can do with the language, right? There were a couple of criticism against this other lingualism. For example, those who are in charge of cognitivism, they say that uh, behaviorism works for on animal, not human beings. And our cognition is somehow ignored by other lingualism and behaviorism. Therefore, they go for cognitivism. Or one of those guys who stood in front of other lingualism was Chomsky. Chomsky developed transformational generative grammar. They say that, for example, in transformational generative grammar, sometimes students produce structures that they haven't heard before. So it is not the case that you just focus on structural linguistic and then you will have a chance to learn a language. In transformational generative grammar, Chomsky talked about poverty of stimulus, poverty of stimulus or stimuli. And he said that, for example, think of stimulus. Yes, sometimes you have a toddler, or something, and that toddler or that, for example, baby is learning how to use the language, and sometimes he or she uses the structures that you haven't taught him from before. Therefore, in poverty of a stimulus and in transformational generative grammar, Chomsky rejected the idea of structural linguistic, and he said that by learning the structure, we would get to know her. We have cognitive code learning as well. This approach promoted language learning as an active mental processes rather than a process of habit formation. Like think of my class. Everything is prescribed by the teacher, and you're all listeners of your professor. Therefore, in my class, you do not. Some of you may not have active mental processes. Therefore, for example, you might be checking your Instagram, your Telegram, and your social media, and it may not be a learner centered class. We have some other, uh, let's say, as well, such as, for example, humanism. Humanism is in use when the teacher or the professor is asked to just take off the mask of authority and lower himself to the level of the students. Once Krashen, I guess you might be familiar with Krashen. You know who Krashen is. He talked about zero grammar approach, and he also talked about effective filter hypothesis. Once Krashen was asked for the reason why students cannot learn that much from their input and why much of this input is not changed to acquisition, and he talked about his effective filter hypothesis, in which he mentioned some points uh, about the word affect, and he said some students might be, for example, in their English learning class, they might be stressed out or they might have some negative feelings, and these negative feelings would prevent them from learning what they like. And yeah, that's it. Moving on, we have silent way. In silent way, again, if I check it to my dictionary, I mean Langman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics, you may see that in silent way, the teacher does not talk that much, and he makes use of some rods, some colorful rods, and the teacher is silent in true sense of words, and he uses visual aids, wall charts, or some rods, and he uses his gesture mime. And the one who is in charge of silent way is Caleb Gategno, right? Um, we have different methods to English language teaching, and like Suggestopedia, which was developed later on by Lazanov, in which a student's class is more similar to their bedroom rather than a class or something, and in which they feel comfortable. I guess we had enough of discussion about CLT, enough of discussion about, uh, let's say, uh, other lingualism. The what one which is new in here, and I guess you have already heard of it, is going to be task-based language teaching. What does TBLT mean? TBLT means in TBLT. I mean, just type it down here. In TBLT or task-based language teaching, you make you make use of authentic authentic language through meaningful meaningful tasks. What does it mean? What does it mean? That means, for example, in TBLT, you assign students with some role. You say, for example, you are the doctor, and another person is the patient, and you teach them, for example, how to take in conversation, or how, for example, to talk about different topics, and how to get their message across. For example, you say, okay, you're the doctor and you're the patient. The patient refers to you with some symptoms of, I don't know, having a virus like a coronavirus, and the doctor should, for example, asking for this symptom using this structure, and the patient responds using another structure. So this is going to be like uh, an accurate and a summary of what TBLT is about. You have authenticity, authentic. I wonder if you know what authentic is uh, in life situation, right? In the world of let's say language teaching. Do you have any idea what authentic is? Can somebody please talk so that I can just have this feeling that you're all present in the class? Can you tell me what authentic is? You can turn on your microphone from here and keep talking about the word authentic. What does it mean? Somebody's typing. Something real, I guess. Yes, thank you, Mohammed. Yes, something real. Something which is not fake, something which is based upon truth is going to be authentic. But in the world of English language teaching, the word authentic has got two different interpretations. When we say, for example, a book, an authentic book, we mean it was developed by native uh, speaker and understood by another native speaker. This is going to be the first meaning of the word authentic. And the second meaning of the word authentic is going to be like developed, developed to be used in real life situations. For example, think of, I don't know, present simple or present continuous. If you have mastered them and you know what they are, you know, for example, what present continuous or what present simple is about, but you do not have the ability to use it in real life situation. When you see, for example, somebody's doing something, you cannot use that present continuous. That means you were not exposed to the authentic language. Okay, so the word authentic has got these meanings in the world of English language teaching. Let me move on. Uh, we had enough of discussion about what is the best method. I took note from Prabhu and Kumaralawadi. We can say that one method is not superior to another one based upon what we have learned so far, because they have truth or validity that may best matched with different contexts. There exists another line of thinking, which is morpheme order studies. You know, in my country, Iran, it is very interesting for you to know that first in our high schools, we, for example, when we want to teach the uh, past simple tense, first we start with regular, sorry, that is tense, my bad. Yeah, first we teach the students regular verbs, and then we teach them irregulars, right? But quite the opposite. I was just checking a book called English Grammar in Use. That is, in my light, one of the best book in the world that exists for teaching and learning of a grammar point. Uh, I saw that first the book introduces irregular verbs, and then regular verbs. But what is the best way of teaching the past simple tense is still unknown and can be further investigated in a line of study that is being referred to as the morpheme studies. Like how in morpheme studies we want to see how and which certain items of grammar are first acquired. If you listen to grammar, if you listen to Krashen, who talked a little bit about of grammar, he said uh, in his zero grammar approach, Krashen mentioned that we do not need to like uh, learn grammar because we can communicate with one another, and grammar might be a point that blocks our conversation. Later on in the discussion of this book, we have some points about learner-centered classroom. A learner-centered classroom has got a special feature, the one in which students are actively involved in their own learning process is going to be a learner-centered classroom. Like right now, uh, as a language learner or language teacher, you may not just tell your professor at university what to do and what not to do, or which chapter to cover and which one not to cover in the class. Therefore, my class, at least Mr. Jabari's class, or yeah, Professor Jabari's class, are not uh, examples of a learner-centered classroom because you do not uh, take up the responsibility of making decision about what to learn or how to learn it or how to be evaluated. And the teacher even does not maximize the class time so that students learn how to do something. Uh, we have a definition of a learner-centered classroom in here. According to this view, the teacher is the boss, and it is the professional responsibility of the teacher to make decisions. In classes in which we do not, classes which are teacher-centered, the teacher is like a boss. He tells you what to do and what not to do, and you have to be responsible for your decision making. Therefore, a teacher who goes for a learner-centered classroom seeks out opportunities to involve learners in becoming more reflective and in making more decisions about their own learning. Whenever I run a class, whenever I take a class, uh, I have to give you a chance to be more reflective than ever before. Therefore, involving students in their learning process needs a couple of strategies. For example, making instructional goals clear to the learners, like what you have to do and what you should learn at the end of this chapter is going to be super important to me. Help learners to create their own goals, encourage learners to use their second language outside of the classroom. I have to help you to become aware of your learning and processes and strategies, show you how to identify your own preferred styles and strategies, give learners to make choices between different options in the classroom, and so many other points, such as teaching you how to create your own learning tasks, provide learners with opportunities to master some aspect of the second language, and then teach it to others and create contexts in which learners investigate language and become their own researchers of language. So these are different features of how a teacher can involve learners in their learning process. Moving on, uh, we had enough of discussion about what the best method is. And according to the author of this book, everybody needs to develop his own personal methodology because depending on who our target audience are, uh, I mean, the level of students' knowledge, depending on their background knowledge, and depending on the observation that we have of the learners, and their learning preferences and their perceptual preferences, I have to develop my own methodology and and put it into practice within the class time. If you have a look at here, you may see two examples are given to you in which a students made the same type of mistake. He said, "I go home at 3 o'clock yesterday," but the teacher's response, I mean, teacher A and B, they respond differently to uh, these students' utterances. In the first one, teacher A said that, no, remember, Louis, the past tense of go is went. Here, you may see that the teacher provided him or her with, actually, it was him because of Louis, provided him with the correct, let's say, form of the verb go. But in the second one, the teacher, with some, let's say, elements of chagrin and surprise, said that you went home at 3. Did you, Louis? Here you see that in the first teacher explicitly corrected the students, but the second teacher
does that in an implicit way, and because of that, you may see that teachers adopt different approaches to treat students' error. One gives explicit explanation of what the correct form can be, and the other one implicitly reminds Lewis of making a kind of grammatical mistake. Therefore, you have to develop your own classroom practices about how to treat students' error, how to teach them based upon situations and circumstances. Uh, another point to be covered within this chapter are some kind of, let's say, common features for instructional sequences. Let's say classroom. You know that before doing any linguistic, let's say, task, you need to do something. We call them pre-task activities. They have, for example, common features like you have to create interest if you want to, for example, teach your students a unit which is all about football and football players. You may write down the name of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo on the board and create interest in their talks. Therefore, you can help them activate their schema or their schemata. When we say schema, we mean the background knowledge. Okay, you by writing the name of Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, you just help them uh, rethink of, I don't know, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and then you introduce new vocabulary, and then you revise their grammatical points. For example, you teach them how they can report the result of a football match or something. Each task has got a couple of pre-tasks. While you're doing the task, you may just uh, provide feedback to the students' performance. If, for example, they deviate from the target language, you can give them some feedback about what they should say and what they haven't mentioned and what they haven't said about football. And then you may just self-study these pages. I don't want you to just keep up with me. You can just have a look at these, let's say, activities about how, for example, to activate students' intuitive heuristic or their background knowledge, and while you want to introduce something new to them, and what they should do when they're exposed to the task, and mention different types of tasks. We have role play tasks in which people exchange ideas, simulations. You act as if you're someone else. Problem solving. You pop a question in the class, and it's going to be an argumentative topic, and you ask students, for example, to think of possible solutions to that problem. You listen to authentic audio and video material. By authentic, according to what your friend said, we mean something real, but here we mean that it was developed by true native speakers like Americans. Discussions, decision making, information gaps, and so on and so forth. Therefore, you may just self study these materials and see what we can do when the task is over. That is pretty much of what we have in chapter one of this book. You may just study these examples. They're nothing important, but please have a look. In this section, we have a conclusion for chapter one of your book. The author provided a basic introduction to language teaching methodology, sketching out how the field has evolved over the last 40 years, and then look at the contemporary approaches within the context of communicative approach and language teaching. This had to be a selective introduction. A comprehensive text on language teaching methodology would be hundreds of pages in length. And the author wishes you the best of things while you're reading the rest of this chapter. You may see some kind of reference and reference list in here. Before I leave, I would like to ask you once again to just download the PDF version of this book, Langman Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics, and please search some technical words, such as, for example, tasks, such as, I don't know, such as methodology. You can see how different tasks are from, for example, exercises, how different methods are from different approaches. Like if you go to this book, uh, which is alphabetically order, and search for the word task, you might be exposed to numerous definitions, but you can see task in task. You have some explanation about task. uh, in teaching, it is an activity which is designed to help achieve a particular language particular learning goal. Whatever that helps you achieve a particular learning goal is going to be a task. They have got a number of dimensions. Like in defining what a task is, you have to go for goals, the kind of goals teachers and learners identify for a task. You have to go for the procedures. We mean the operations or procedures learner use to complete a task, order, the location of a task within a sequence of other tasks, pacing, that means the speed or the amount of time you allocate on completing a task, or learning strategies, the type of assessments you want to have, how success on task will be determined, participation in a task, whether you're supposed to work with a partner, with a group of other learners, resources, what type of materials have to be covered, the type of language you want to use for completion of a task, and so many other points to be mentioned in a classroom of theories. So you have definitions of different, let's say, terms in Langman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics. My recommendation to you is that please download the PDF version and see if you know the definition of the technical terms that we had in chapter one of David Newman. Another one, which is going to be the last example I searched to this dictionary, is going to be an approach. You know, by having a look at this section, you can see how approaches are different from methods and techniques. In language teaching, the theory or philosophy and principles underlying a particular set of teaching practices is going to be an approach. Language teaching is sometimes discussed in terms of three related aspect: approach, method means what is practiced in the classroom, and technique is like the narrowest sense of method and approach. I mean, this one is the most general, and something narrow and specific is technique. Different theories about the nature of language and how languages are learned or approached imply different ways of teaching language, and different methods makes use of different kinds of classroom activity. By classroom activity, we mean technique, right? Therefore, you have some other examples as well. This is a very good book, a very good reference book, and uh, I need to tell you 2 points: that all the exam questions will be directly taken from the text of this book, Practical English Language Teaching, because some of you are concerned about your final scores, and because of that, I may crop the PDF of chapter one with you and share with you the highlighted points and points to be studied before the exam, so you don't need to worry about what your scores are going to be like. And please have a look at some of the other materials, such as, for example, Langman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics. Uh, that is going to be the pretty much of it. I hope to see you uh, sometime after the long holiday that we have. But we have to resume our online classes. There is a couple of questions in here. I would like to answer them, if any. Task means something we have to do, but exercise is something that we have to do to practice, for example, another language. Yes, it can be. See, one main point, Muhammad Abdurrahman, if I'm not mistaken with your name, if I mispronounce your names, please just let me know about the correct pronunciation, because I'm stupid with Arabic and I don't know even the alphabet of this language. Uh, yeah, yeah. In Yeah, thank you. See, the difference between a task and exercise is that in task there is always a gap of meaning, and in doing the task, students have to make use of their background knowledge, their schema, as we read in the chapter. But when we say exercise, we mean something rigid. We mean something that does not require much of understanding. You just give students a pattern, and they have to follow that pattern. For example, a grammatical pattern to exercise something. But the one that you have mentioned here can be a different point. But for further information, I may just ask you to refer to Langman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics to see how Jackson Recharged looks at the difference. But what I know is this. Any other questions or inquiries about the content, about our classes, about, on a regular interval, we have to run this class every. Go on, please.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes, hi, please go on. Yes, yeah. Yeah, see, one of the problems that, according to what my colleagues have told me, is that some of you are concerned with your final score. Therefore, I myself, I decided to highlight some of the most important sections of this book, and the exam questions will be designed based upon the highlighted sections. But that doesn't mean that you mustn't study the parts which are not highlighted. You may just have a look at this table, but focus more specifically on the text or on the phrases which are highlighted for the sake of exam, right? Clear. Yeah. Which one do you prefer, this one or LMS? Okay, no problem. No problem. I just listen to my student's voice to see what the best option is for you. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mohammed, for your points. Um, yeah, this is just the first session. I just wanted to break the ice, so as to allow every other person to talk. We had only one speaker, but from next session on, I expect some of the people who feel comfortable within the flow of the class to just express their ideas freely within the class time. When you do not speak, that means you're busy doing something else, and I don't want that happen to you. At least you can listen to me. I mean, politely ask you not to turn your deaf ear to me. That is one point that I would like to mention about online classes. If you don't have any question, class is dismissed, and you can leave the forum. I will share the materials I cover with you after the class on our Telegram group, if you like.